Hello, welcome to my presentation, Super Anti-Heroines, the threatening and revolutionary force of superwomen. Superheroines are paradoxical figures. They are empowering and yet hypersexualized, strong and independent, and yet they fight for a society in which women are subordinate to men. The female superhero originates in an act of criticism, a challenge to the masculinistic world of superhero adventure, writes Lillian S. in Wonder Women. However, at the same time as superheroines, they should embody the values of the society they are protecting. That means they embody the status quo and confirm its stereotypes. But in a prevalent male chauvinistic society, where men are in power and women must fight for their rights, how can they protect this kind of status quo? Thus, an ambiguous situation is created, in which the status quo come at once protected and questioned. In the superheroine stereotype and innovation work together, concludes Robinson. Even if they are objectified, draw with hypersexualized bodies, provocative with revealing clothes, superwomen always keep an anti-heroic element, disruptive, potentially revolutionary, even monstrous as it appears in villainesses. The ambitious women and the heroine are strange monsters, writes Simone de Beauvoir in Le Deuxième Sexe. Like anti-heroes, superheroines are dangerous threats to the status quo. They challenge our stereotype about women and superheroes. Their hypersexualization appears then as a way to control them, to exercise their potential threat. In this modern era, the hero is a heroine. However, in the 21st century, heroine still more closely resembles the anti-hero archetype, writes Cynthia Lyle Scott. Is it true? Are superwomen today still extremely anti-heroic? How are they challenging our concepts of hero and heroine? I will try to answer these questions through the analysis of characters like Wonder Woman, Jessica Jones, the new Miss Marvel and Catwoman, and referring to Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre philosophy. I will focus on this anti-heroic aspect of superwomen in comic books and its dialectic with the most normative and stereotypical ones. First, what is an anti-hero? Not every bad guy protagonist of a story could be called anti-hero. Anti does not mean the opposite of a hero. On the contrary, anti-heroes must have heroic characteristics. The anti-hero can exist only if heroic model remains present in absentia by preteritum, writes Victor Brumberg in Price of Anti-Heroes. The anti-hero challenges the concept of hero because it is a hero that should not be one or cannot be one. In this world, does not allow it. What does it mean in superheroes universe? Which one are the tangible differences between superheroes and anti-heroes? We will focus on two significant elements that distinguish the superhero and the anti-hero. First, the relationship with society. Superheroes remain in a liminal state between their mask and their civilian identity, which allows them to have a connection with the society. The superhero is still bound up to the society in which he acts. Staying split between the brand new world he has created and the previous one allows him to not conflict with the society but to be, in its eye, a kind of protector, a hero. It is fundamental for the superhero to remain in this liminal state. I quote, "Borders are the place for superheroes, who, by virtue of what is different about them, do not fit into the societies that they protect. From the borders of society, they can watch and protect, but never truly share it. When they do, heroism becomes compromised. The defining feature of the superhero and the superhero genre is the liminal state. Superheroes must remain on the borders." End of quote. That writes Vincent M. Gain in Genre and Superheroism, Batman in the New Millennium, published in the 21st Century Superhero. Anti-heroes, on the other side, wholly separated from their society. The society should not be saved or protected, but challenged, transformed, even destroyed. In a world on the verge of collapse, scene of endless conflict, massacres, genocides, threatened by ecological catastrophes with apocalyptic consequences, superheroes represent a gross lie, writes Dino Cera in his work Superheroines and Superpoteri. A superhero can exist only in an essentially good society that can be protected and restored, and not questioned. Superheroes function to protect and restore an essential good society, while anti-heroes do not reaffirm the status quo values. Instead, they challenge them. They bring a fracture with a negative reality. A revolutionary anti-hero like V attack the status quo. His world is not good, but problematic, even dystopic. While the status quo, defended and restored by the superhero, is overall good, the anti-hero of the comic finds himself always in a negative, tragic, and corrupt reality. The Punisher, for example, operates in the same world as Spider-Man, but his personal reality is extremely dystopic, made of blood and tragedy. Batman and Superman give us another excellent example. Metropolis and Gotham City both represent New York City. However, while the first one is a perfect society that Superman could defeat without question, Gotham City must be not only protected but also questioned and revolutionized. Batman finds himself often fighting against police and the corrupt status quo. Is always in balance between being a superhero and an anti-hero. At the end of The Dark Knight Returns, for example, we see Batman after Bruce Wayne's person's death, planning his future revolution against a dystopic America. Inside a society that should not be destroyed and protected, the protagonist cannot be a hero. However, despite this conflict with their society, anti-heroes appear not immoral, not like the villains. Their moral is heroic, like Nietzsche meant it. They live on absolutes. As Rorschach writes on his journal, there is good and there is evil, and evil must be punished. Even in face of Armageddon, I shall not compromise on this. Superheroes have their own values, but in order to be heroes, they should compromise their moral with the common one, with the society. They should remain in the liminal state. For the anti-hero, instead, this liminality is lost. The dualism disappears. In an age of skepticism and drilling faith, an age marked by the pervasive awareness of loss and disarray, the deliberate subversion of the heroic tradition might betray an urge to sever or reinvent meaning, writes Brumberg. While superheroes and villains reaffirm our values and worldview, proposing a clear fight between good and evil, anti-heroes challenge our worldview because they share our values, some of them at least, but they bring them to the extreme, showing the aporias and the contradiction of our moral, and in doing so, they reinvent the meaning of our reality. They challenge our moral, our expectation, our concept of hero, and even the rule of narrative. While the superhero at the end of the story resolves a conflict, the anti-hero is always a paradoxical figure. He embodies a question without an answer. Consider this aspect in relation to the superheroine. In what world does the superheroine live? The superhero's universe is initially a male world and in many ways sexist. Superheroes are usually men, Caucasian and heterosexual. They embody the status quo they are defending. Women usually remain on the background, subordinated to the hero. Many of the heroic characteristics are usually considered male characteristics: physical strength, independence, courage, the use of violence. Superhero's mission is to protect and reaffirm the values of his society. For the superheroine, reaffirming a society in which the women are subjugated by men will mean to stay in a state of dependence, weakness, inaction. It will mean not to be a heroine at all. She will lose characteristics that are fundamental for the superhero: strength, independence, individualism, and ability to act. There is an example of this kind of superheroine submitted to the status quo mentality. These are the super damsel in distress during the Silver Age: Invisible Girl, Wasp, Marvel Girl. superheroine only because they are members of a superhero group. While they are drawn as weak, they faint constantly, and they are more interested in shopping and love than in superhero business. The following words of Simone de Beauvoir describe perfectly the condition of this character. The mass of women is at the fringes of history, and for each of them circumstances are an obstacle and not a springboard. To change the face of the world, one has to first be firmly anchored to it, but women firmly rooted in society are those subjugated by it. These characters are heroines only because they are members of superheroes team, but actually they confirm the stereotype of their time. They remain subjugated by the male-dominated status quo. The real superwomen in this context appear then as strange figures, who question the norm and challenge the established social order. The ambitious women and the heroine are strange monsters, writes Simone de Beauvoir. Indeed, for a society that sees women as weak and subjugated, these figures are threatening, disturbing, anti-heroic monsters. During the crisis of the Dark Age, for example, we see a transformation. The 80s, the USA has faced a deep crisis in the past years. The Vietnam War, fear for the atomic conflict, the Cold War, JFK and Martin Luther King murders, the Watergate scandal, but also new and cultural movements like the civil rights movement and the hippie subculture. Everything shows a profound social transformation and a crisis of values and certainties. If during the Silver Age the criticism of society of the outdated values of the previous generation was latent and barely mentioned, now it is distinct, irreverent, ferocious. The infamous comic code loses importance. All those elements repressed for many years explode. The world of superhero is filled with violence, sex, social problems, and death. In period when society fragments, women become freer, writes Simone de Beauvoir. So it cannot surprise that during this period, when the anti-heroes triumph in the page of comics, superheroines become stronger, emancipated. They do not faint anymore. They are even more powerful than the superheroes, and they become more monstrous. The most emblematic example is Marvel Girl. The young Jean Grey, hit by mysterious comic force, becomes Phoenix, one of the most powerful beings of the Marvel Universe. However, she is unable to control so much power, and she becomes ultimately Dark Phoenix, an evil goddess who consumes and destroys entire stars, killing millions. Jean is not the only one, especially among the X-Men. As Mike Madrid notes, it became a tradition and eventually a cliché that all of the team's heroines would go off the deep and turn evil at some point. These heroines turned villainesses represent the ultimate fear that men have about female power. The secret betrayer, the dormant evil waiting to awaken, the weak creature who can't handle power. There was still a message that they could not handle power, as well as a man. These strong, emancipated women are threatening monsters for a patriarchal society that shows them as evil monsters. This connection between the strong and liberated women and the crisis of certainties and stability inside society cannot surprise us, and it works on both ways. Women become freer for a society in crisis, and the free women appear dangerous and anti-heroic inside the patriarchal status quo. Consider the superheroine par excellence, Wonder Woman. Like Superman and Batman, she is courageous, strong, and she fights for truth and justice. However, as a woman, she challenges the standard. She can appear subversive for different reasons. William Marston's idea for his characters was to propose a feminine heroism instead, thus challenging the male values and the moral and proposing a different, feminine one. Wonder Woman's creator thought that the female qualities and values were wrongly diminished and despised, while they should be valued and encouraged. That is why his character is not only strong and skilled like a male superhero, but it also shows traits that Marceau saw as typical feminine. Wonder Woman was intended by its creator as an alternative to gory male-oriented comics, as it tempered masculine violence with an archetypal feminine quality he called "law," writes Robinson in Wonder Woman. Diane is not only a fighter, but also a teacher and an ambassador. She is compassionate, merciful, forgiving. While Batman and Superman are defeating their enemies, lock them up in a punitive center like Blackgate or Arkham Asylum, Wonder Woman sends them to Reform Island, where they can be redeemed and rehabilitated. Even Wonder Woman's iconic weapon, her lasso, which forces her opponents to a loving submission, is intended by Marceau as a feminine item which, like seduction, compels without violence. It is then possible to interpret Wonder Woman as a female heroic archetype, opposed to the canonical male ones. She is not a disturbed version of a male character, and she is not just one of the guys. This makes her anti-normative. She is therefore a potentially threatening figure, concludes Caroline Cockham. Alternatively, at the same time, her heroism can be seen as manly, monstrous, because it destroys the difference between men and women. Strong, courageous, manly? Is she a woman who plays the role of a man? She is fighting for a male-dominated status quo, after all, but she is using also typical male methods, like physical violence. Analyzing her iconography, even bio writes, the eagle is therefore a figure with a strong virile charge. It explicitly represents the strength and ability to command and lead. The combination of Wonder Woman with the myth of the Amazons and therefore of the severe breasts makes a sphinx not of an emancipation of the female but rather of a deliberate and bloody transformation of woman into a man. Bio is not the only one who sees Diana as a man disguised as a woman. The question remains grounded on the male-female dichotomy. Is Wonder Woman a man disguised as a woman, or she is the archetypal of feminine values? It is not questioned if this differentiation makes sense in the first place. The problematic dichotomy characterizes all superwomen, excluding the Silver Age protagonists, super damsel in distress that show a weakness typical of women. It was seen as typical women. Clearly, qualities like strength, weakness, courage, altruism are not male or female. However, they are addressed to men or women depending on the cultural worldview. In Western society in which superheroes come to life, is it possible to observe that the qualities canonically attributed to women reveal their subordination to men. Patriarchal ideology exaggerates biological differences between men and women, making certain that men always have the dominant or masculine roles, and women always have the subordinate or feminine ones. With these words, Rosemary Tong, recalling Kate Millett, makes clear that the so-called female qualities, such as kindness, modesty, humility, empathy, compassion, tenderness, care, sensitivity, altruism, are proposed as feminine in order to subjugate women in a weaker position of dependence. The same is said by Simone de Beauvoir. In reality, women have never pit female values against male ones. It is men wanting to maintain masculine prerogatives who invented this division. They wanted to create a feminine domain, a rule of life of immanence, only to lock woman in it. But it is above and beyond all sexual specification that the existence seeks self-justification in the movement of its transcendence. The very submission of women proves this. This dichotomy itself that distinguishes between male and female heroes, whether we see Diana as an iconic female superheroine or as a hero disguised as heroine, is then revealed to be a result of patriarchal worldview that defines male and female characteristics. We should avoid both of these interpretations by seeing her as an androgynous figure who questions the stereotype of masculine heroism by showing the inconsistency of such differentiations. Nevertheless, despite how we choose to read Wonder Woman, our worldview is questioned in all these cases, thus revealing Wonder Woman as an anti-heroic, anti-normative character who challenge our concept of hero and the stereotype of male and female. It is important to make clear that this conflict, this anti-normative element in Wonder Woman, arises from a relationship with society. Wonder Woman is an anomaly, the warrior from an ancient world who believed in peace, an armor-plate activist helping the most downtrodden, the perfect woman plagued by doubts and about her place in the universe, writes Mike Madrid. The anti-heroic aspect present in Wonder Woman and in all superheroines is since, in our society, they are anomalous, threatening figures. They question the norm and present qualities that patriarchal culture sees as being exclusive of men. In a different society, these characters would simply be heroes. Using the words of Caroline Cockham, it is not Wonder Woman that's tricky. What's tricky is that we live in an unequal world in which girls and women are evaluated, and in which the word girl is delivered as an insult to boys. If people were seen as equal, a female superhero wouldn't be tricky, because she wouldn't be threatening or challenging to the social order through her very existence. She would be just a superhero. Diana is an outsider in our world. It is highlighted by the fact that, in contrast to Batman and Superman, perfect examples of the US society and culture, the first one born and raised in the big western metropolis, the second one raised by a Kansas family, Diana is born in Themyscira and raised by the Amazons. She represents a different culture from the one she leads. Wonder Woman is a foreigner in the men's world, a society that she sees in some respects as barbarous and retrograde. Her mission then is not only to protect our values, some of which she shares, but also as an ambassador to teach the culture and values of her native world. That means she wants to propose a different worldview, challenge some of our beliefs, and transform some aspects of the status quo. This conflict of values, typical of the anti-heroic narrative, can be seen, for example, in the story Icateia. Here Diana has to choose between her legacy, thus by following the rule of the sacred Icateia ritual protecting a young woman who has committed murder, and the American law, thus by turning her in. As in a typical anti-heroic narrative, there is no real solution. Both choices are guilty. We can conclude that Wonder Woman, the superheroine, presents some disturbing and anti-heroic aspects. She is an outsider who does not just confirm our worldview, but also challenges and questions it. The same could be told for all superheroines. The female superhero originates in an act of criticism, a challenge to the masculinistic world of superhero adventure, writes Lillian Robinson. They criticize society, showing a willingness to challenge it, typical of the anti-hero, and proposing models that challenge the status quo. However, at the same time, as superheroines, they should also reflect and protect this status quo. Here then an ambiguous situation is created. The status quo is both protected and questioned by the superheroine. Stereotype and innovation work together in the figure of the superheroine, concludes Robinson. The stereotype not only confirms the view of the culture that the superheroine defends, but it has a regularizing task. It diffuses the threat that all superwomen pose in a male chauvinistic society by conforming them to a stronger stereotype. This regularization can take place in different ways, by putting one or more stronger male superheroes alongside the superheroine, thus reiterating her subordination, by showing her as weak and in need of saving and unable to control her powers, by reducing her to a victim, a phenomenon called by Gail Simone women in refrigerator. Probably the most common way to regularize a superwoman is sexual, by an hypersexualizing representation of her body. Hypersexualization is evident especially in the bad girl style that characterizes the 90s, when it reaches grotesque levels. Nevertheless, today it is not the same, so extreme hypersexualization never disappears completely in superheroes comics. Hypersexualization regularizes superwomen on different levels, exaggerating the female body part, balances the masculine qualities that the superwomen, like her strength, her independence, her use of violence. On a deeper level, these characters are reduced to their facticity, their pure being there, forced to be passive, deprived of their freedom. The male-female contrast reflects, in existentialist thought, the transcendence immanent polarity, freedom and existence. The man is active, the woman passive. Once freedom, the form itself, is defined as masculine, the feminine is bound to the immanence, to the impotence of being, to the in itself. The desire, writes Sartre, aiming at the body as a whole, attains it especially through masses of flesh which are very little differentiated, grossly nerveless, hardly capable of spontaneous movement, through breasts, buttocks, thighs, stomach. This form a sort of image of pure facticity. Hypersexualization reduces superwomen to their flesh, thus objectifying them and reducing the threat they represent. The passive elements of the superheroines' bodies are privileged. Those elements as such define an image of pure facticity. Breasts, buttocks, thighs. Superheroes, on the other side, are drawn as muscular, strong, portrayed in elastic and powerful poses. Their bodies do not reduce them to their facticity, instead they are the expression of their freedom. The male superhero is graceful in his movement, he controls his body completely. Writes Sartre, in grace the body appears as a psychic being in situation, it reveals above all its transcendence as a transcendence transcended. It is in act and is understood in terms of the situation and of the end pursued. In grace the body is the instrument which manifests freedom. The graceful act is so far as it reveals the body as a precision instrument, furnishes it at each instant with its justification for existing. The same does not happen for superwomen. In fact, this reduction to flesh also occurs by drawing superheroines and villainesses in obscene poses, like the anatomically impossible broken back pose. These unreal poses highlight the passivity of the flesh. The obscene appear when the body adopts postures which entirely strip it of its acts and which reveal the inertia of the flesh. By showing superwomen in obscene poses, their freedom is denied. Finally, there is a more disturbing technique that is used to reduce superwomen's freedom through pain. Gail-Simone notes that superwomen are more subject to violence compared to supermen, a phenomenon called by her women in refrigerator, that reveals, beside other things, a cruel sadism, which are subjected superheroines as well as villainesses. Sadism is an effort to incarnate the other through violence. In pain, facticity invades consciousness, and ultimately the reflective consciousness is fascinated by the facticity of the unreflective consciousness. There is then indeed an incarnation through pain. The sadist's effort is to ensnare the other in his flesh by means of violence and pain. Through the infliction of pain, through humiliation, freedom is confined in the passivity of the flesh. The phenomenon women in refrigerator performs the same function as hypersexualization by reducing superwomen to the body, deprives them of freedom. These methods reduces superwomen to the passivity of the flesh, to the impotence of being, thus denying their freedom and balancing their heroic, threatening elements. While on the one hand, superheroines are drawn with extreme revealing and outrageous costumes, their regularization also works in the opposite direction, thus creating a paradox. Nevertheless, they appear provocative and almost pornographic. The superheroines remain prudish and traditional in their relationship with the sex. Madrid talks about a double standard. Superheroines are presented in an highly sexualized way, but we are told that their scandalous costumes don't represent their true natures. A female superhero may dress like a whore, but between those perfect breasts must be the heart of a virgin. The only women getting action in the bedroom were villainesses. Writes Mike Madrid. The superheroine must be saint and whore, both an archetype that reconfirm the standard and the male-dominated status quo. On the one hand, she must be hypersexualized, an object of desire, like we have seen. On the other hand, to be a superheroine, she must be a good girl. She must conform, even sexually, with the traditional moral code. Therefore, no one-night stands, only monogamous heterosexual relationship. On the contrary, the sexuality of characters near to be villainesses or anti-heroine is freer, more emancipated, but also more monstrous. Villainesses and anti-heroines do break not only laws and morality, but also the norms of sexuality. While superheroines must play the role of the good girl, villainesses and anti-heroine can express their sexuality freer. Villainesses represent only kind of sexual nature a woman could have in comic book, cruel, forbidding, and terrifying. Right, Madrid. The message in comic book about women and sex was this: powerful and intriguing women might be sexual, but it also means they were bad. In this way, as Madrid rightly points, sexuality, and especially women's sexuality, is linked with a monstrous and even evil nature. Villainesses use sex as a weapon, like for example Poison Ivy or Enchantress, who can mentally control their heroes through the kiss. Their bodies and sexuality are used as a weapon to steal the power of the male hero. Characters such as Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Catwoman must use display of femininity, particularly over sexuality, in order to obtain and keep their power. And they serve as an example of the correlation often drawn between female power and monstrosity, wherein strong women are portrayed as less than human. Right, Christina Knopf. The free sexuality of villainesses is somehow reassuring. It is linked to the evil that the hero fights and defeats, restoring the order. Nevertheless, it remains also a disturbing and threatening element, even if diffused. This aggressive and free sexuality reveals power. Through sex, the villainesses can steal the power of the hero. Here is the real monstrous, frightening element of these characters. However, it is precisely in the fact that this freedom, this power, is designed as monstrous, even in an attempt to exorcise it, that to reveal its potentially revolutionary anti-heroic force. These are not girls subordinate to the male superhero. The villainesses are adult women, independent, free, powerful, therefore dangerous. That is why they are portrayed as villainesses. Mystique, Black Widow, Black Cat, Enchantress, Catwoman, Poison Ivy, Amanda Waller are all adult women with power, and they are all villainesses or anti-heroines. Breaking the law is, for these women, also a challenge to the status quo ruled by men. Probably the thieves like Catwoman or Black Cat are the more emblematic. As Simone de Beauvoir writes, kleptomania, the desire to transgress laws, to violate a taboo, the giddiness of the dangerous and forbidden act are centrally essential to the girl thief. It is affirming one's authority arrogantly. It is rejecting the established order as well as defining its guardians. The criminal and monstrous aspect cannot surprise. As de Beauvoir writes, the emancipated women, inside a society ruled by men, can only exercise negative freedom, expressed in license and dissipation, even crime. What happened today? Superwomen remains outsiders. They still are paradoxical, potentially anti-heroic figures who challenge the stereotypical worldview and propose new models. However, achievements have been made. There are new characters who remain somehow anti-heroic, but in the meantime they also reveal that the stereotypical conception of hero and heroine has changed. Jessica Jones is probably the most emblematic example among these new characters. Graphically, the difference with the standard superhero look is destabilizing. She does not wear a tight, sexy costume, and her body is not hypersexualized. On the contrary, her classical look, jeans and leather jacket, hide her bodies despite showing it. She remains an outsider, not exactly a classic superhero. However, she is not regularized. There is nothing that balances her masculine characteristic. Another superheroine that shows us some progress in the way superheroines are portrayed and received is Batwoman, Kathleen Kane, who breaks one taboo by being the first openly gay superheroine. If we think to the first Batwoman, Kathy Kane, created only to be a love interest for Batman for the purpose of defending him of the accusation of being homosexual, this reboot is even more powerful. Finally, two Marvel superheroines challenge the classic heroic model by proposing a heroism without violence, Miss Marvel and Squirrel Girl. Both try to avoid violence. Doreen, for example, is even able to defeat Galactus without fight. She just talked to him. Rather than beating her enemies with squirrel and wits, she also be empathic. She is the kind of person who could ask questions before getting into a fistfight. In a real-world context, that's not a big deal, but in the context of superhero comic, it feels a bit revolutionary. Write Godrum, Prescott, and Smith. One may wonder if this critical and alternative approach to violence in the superheroic world does not work only to the background of inevitably constitutive violence of the genre. Nevertheless, through this rejection of violence, there is a deconstruction of the superhero genre that shows us once again how superheroes are linked to the anti-hero. If the anti-hero of the Dark Age made extreme use of violence, now happens the opposite. And maybe this could be even more revolutionary. If violence is a fundamental element of superheroism to impose and reiterate a reality where power is predominantly in the hands of men, then for a superhero narrative to be truly feminist, it requires the super-empowered agent not only identify as female, but also to open discourse around the problems of traditionally male phallocentric violence and offer an alternative. Writes Godrum, Prescott, and Smith. It is then possible to end with a positive note. These new characters are strong girls and women, courageous but not manly or threatening. They are not hypersexualized, and there is no need to regularize them to balance their male heroic quality with passive feminine ones. Yes, there are some anti-normative elements. Nevertheless, those characters are without the superheroine. They show heroism free from gender differences. They are heroine, period. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. And here you find all the quotes and the artist for the images I used. Thank you again.